What if I told you that the best shooter in the NBA wasn't Curry? Yes, it sounds outrageous, a blasphemy for the devotees of the three-pointer. But there was a player who for more than 800 games seemed to never miss. They say he made 1,139 mid-range shots in his career, and each one was a dagger. A guy who shared a locker room with Curry, with Clay, with Durant. But he didn't need threes or hype. He played from the shadows, from the mid-post, with a calm that drove opponents crazy. When the game got tense, when the stars couldn't find the basket even with a GPS, he would plant his feet, spin, and boom. Net, lethal, silent, efficient. And the most incredible thing isn't his accuracy. The most incredible thing is that this guy years earlier was about to lose his leg. He went from being a broken promise to becoming the secret weapon of a dynasty. Who was he? How did he do it? And why does his name almost never come up in debates? Let me tell you the story of Shawn Livingston, the player who reinvented the art of shooting when everyone had already written him off. From the very beginning, Shawn Livingston seemed made for another era. At 6 feet 6 inches, with incredibly long arms and smooth movements, he was a point guard with a small forward's body who played like a veteran and thought like a coach. He wasn't your typical athletic project, nor the crazy shooter who sets the court on fire. His game was something else: elegance, timing, court vision, a clean kind of basketball, effortless. Almost silent, as if he knew something others hadn't figured out yet. Straight out of high school in Peoria, Illinois, he was picked 4th overall in the 2004 draft. The Clippers went all in, not just for his talent, but for his style. In a draft that included names like Dwight Howard and Luol Deng, Livingston was the most intriguing because he didn't look like anyone else, and because in the team's hallways, some were already calling him the new Magic Johnson. For his height, for his vision, for the way he led without dominating and dominated without imposing. He was skinny, quiet, with no tattoos or marketing, but when he had the ball, the game adjusted to his rhythm. In his rookie season, he averaged 7.4 points and 5 assists. But beyond the numbers, there was something in his style of play that was mesmerizing, as if he was reading a book that the rest hadn't even opened yet. By his 3rd year, he had earned a spot as a starter. His averages went up to 9.3 points and 5.1 assists, and he started earning the respect of those who knew how to truly watch. He wasn't a star yet, but all the signs pointed in that direction. He had it all: youth, talent, vision, potential. The only thing he needed was time. And then time broke. On February 26, 2007, everything changed. It was just another game against the Charlotte Bobcats, second quarter. Livingston picked up speed, attacked the rim from the left, and jumped for a routine layup. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until he landed. At the exact moment his left foot touched the ground, his knee bent in a direction that shouldn't exist. What followed was silence, a thick, uncomfortable silence. In the broadcast, you can see players covering their faces, looking away. Some couldn't even look at the monitor. What had just happened wasn't an injury. It was a horror scene. The diagnosis was downright inhuman: complete tear of the anterior cruciate ligament, the posterior ligament, the lateral meniscus, dislocation of the kneecap, dislocation of the femur tibia joint, and a sprain of the medial ligament. In short, his knee came apart as if it had been opened with a wrench. Not one, but all the essential parts of the mechanism were out of place. Doctors weren't just questioning whether he could play again, they questioned whether he could even keep the leg. There was a real conversation about the possibility of amputation. That's what was said: amputation. For a 21-year-old athlete in the middle of his upward curve, his career, his future, his life, all hanging by a surgical thread. In a matter of seconds, the narrative changed. The kid who was destined to inherit the NBA was now fighting not to disappear. What came next was a mapeless hell. Physical pain, yes, but also a suffering with no painkillers. Learning to walk again, rebuilding muscle from scratch, learning to trust a leg that no longer responded the same. And in the meantime, watching the NBA from the outside, watching your teammates grow, improve, sign contracts, while you stay stuck on a stretcher, wondering if everything you once dreamed had already evaporated forever. At that moment, Livingston wasn't fighting for a ring, or for a spot, or for fame. He was fighting to still be here, to not vanish, and that's a battle very few ever win. Shawn Livingston's rehabilitation lasted 16 months, more than a year and a half between surgeries, ice packs, slow exercises, and a frustration that couldn't be eased even with painkillers. But beyond the physical pain, what was truly put to the test was his mind. Because one thing is recovering from an injury, and something very different is accepting that your body will never be the same again. The Livingston who had soared over shorter point guards, who floated in the air with that natural smoothness, was gone, and he wasn't coming back. A decision had to be made: mourn what was lost or build something new from scratch. He chose the latter. He learned to move differently, to play with a different pace, to rely more on his vision than his athleticism. What for many was the end, for him became a laboratory of technique, of patience, of reinvention. But miracles don't come with a contract. In 2008, at just 22 years old, the Clippers, the team that had drafted him, that had believed in him, decided to let go. They waived him, just like that, from top 5 draft pick to unemployed. No team, no rhythm, and no certainties. And even so, he didn't give up. He kept training, doing physical therapy, sending out videos. He repeated basic movements over and over again, trained as if someone was watching even when no one was, waiting for that call that maybe would never come. Until one day, the phone rang. It was the Miami Heat. They were offering a non-guaranteed contract, a tryout, an opportunity. He played 4 games. Then they waived him again. But that wasn't the defeat. On the contrary, because that minimum, that fragment of a return was much more than just a box score stat. It was stepping onto an NBA court again. It was proof that he had survived, that he hadn't disappeared. Livingston was back, broken, yes, limited too, but back on the map, and in a league that discards you quickly and forgets you even faster. Being on the map is already a huge win. Enorme. After his brief stint in Miami, what followed was a journey with no clear direction. A silent tour around the NBA where Shawn Livingston went from being a promising talent to just another name on a roster. Oklahoma City, Washington, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Brooklyn. 6 teams in 6 years, almost all on 10-day contracts, minimum salaries, limited minutes. They signed him to fill a gap and let him go when they found something better. That raw, that cruel. But what no one saw was that he was making the most of the chaos. Every team was a school, every system, a new language, and Livingston, without saying a word, learned them all. His body could no longer break through defenses, but his mind was sharper than ever. He started shaping his game around what he could still do, and that's when the weapon that would redefine him appeared, the mid-range jumper. While the NBA became obsessed with the three-pointer, he decided to go against the current. He used his height, 6 feet 6 inches, to punish smaller point guards from the mid-post. A couple of dribbles, spin move, and that turnaround jumper that started to look automatic. Impossible to stop, impossible to read. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't viral, but it was effective. And in a league that was speeding up more and more, his slow-paced game became uncomfortable. Like an analog clock in a digital city. No one wanted to defend him, no one could anticipate him, and meanwhile, he kept racking up minutes, reading the floor, learning to move without relying on leaping ability or speed. In Washington, during the 2009 to 2010 season, he gave a strong sign, 9.2 points and 4.5 assists per game. Nothing spectacular, but enough to remind everyone that he was still there, that he could still contribute, that if given a clear role, he would fulfill it. Even so, stability didn't come, but neither did he give up. Each year, he survived, stayed in shape, waited, not out of desperation, but because he knew that at some point a team would need exactly what he had to offer. And one day, the opportunity came, not as a star, not with lights or fanfare, but as what he had always known how to be, a piece that makes everything else work. The 2013 to 2014 season with the Brooklyn Nets was, without anyone really noticing, the turning point. Livingston didn't just find minutes, he found a role. He played 76 games, 54 as a starter. He averaged 8.3 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds. But beyond the numbers, something had clicked. His game was no longer a limited version of what it used to be. It was something else. More complete, more mature, more dangerous. That year, he shot 49.7% from the field, an extremely high number for a guard without a three-point shot. Because that was the key, he didn't need to shoot threes. He didn't. Almost never. Across his entire career, he attempted only 73 three-pointers, and he didn't need more. The mid-range jumper, the one many coaches had already dismissed as inefficient, became his signature, his comfort zone. From 10 to 16 feet out, Livingston was surgical, methodical, lethal, and he did it all without forcing, without rushing, without demanding the spotlight. He came in, did his job, and went back to the bench, like a craftsman, one who doesn't need to shout because the product speaks for itself. He used his height to post up smaller guards, turned on them calmly, and killed them with a fadeaway that looked straight out of the 90s. In an NBA where everyone wanted to run and shoot from deep, he walked to the rim and killed you from the inside. That year with the Nets wasn't just a good stretch, it was a silent statement. Livingston was no longer a recovering ex-prospect. He was a fully formed player with a unique style, with real value. And for the first time in a long time, teams stopped seeing him as the guy who blew out his knee. They started seeing him for what he truly was, a valuable, reliable piece. Someone you knew exactly what you'd get from and who never failed to do his job. And in that context, someone showed up who understood him before anyone else did. Someone who knew how to spot gold where others only saw spare parts. In 2014, the Golden State Warriors were cooking up something big. They already had Steph, they already had Clay, they already had Draymond, but something was missing. A piece that didn't seek the spotlight but could read the game. Someone who didn't need to be the protagonist but understood when to speed up and when to slow things down. Another cog in a machine that was about to explode. And that's when Steve Kerr picked up the phone, they offered Livingston a 3-year, $16 million contract, and many people laughed. The Warriors betting on a player who had been on 8 teams in 6 years, who didn't shoot threes, who had a knee held together with surgical wire, but Kerr wasn't looking for another scorer. He was looking for someone who knew when to stay silent. He saw intelligence, he saw control, he saw composure, and he understood that in a team full of dynamite, you needed someone who could disarm the bomb and then rebuild it again. What no one expected was that this bet would end up redefining both the team and Livingston himself. Because in the middle of the three-point frenzy in the fastest and most effective system in the NBA, there was room for someone like him. While Stephen Clay lit it up from the perimeter, Livingston moved between the lines like a surgeon. When defenses jumped out to cover the three, he calmly stepped in. 2 dribbles, low post, spin, shot, boom, net. His 6 feet, 6 inches height made him a nightmare for opposing point guards. The Warriors used him to create mismatches, post up, slow the pace, or simply move the ball when things were getting too hectic. He didn't need to score 20 a night. He needed to do what no one else was doing, make smart decisions, keep his cool, and execute flawlessly. And he did, over and over again. That first season with Golden State, he played all 82 games. He averaged nearly 6 points and over 3 assists in under 19 minutes per game. But it was in the playoffs when he became indispensable. Kerr would bring him in when Curry was cold or out of rhythm, and the guy responded like it was nothing. No mistakes, no panic, as if he'd been playing in the finals his whole life. Livingston didn't just fit in, he became essential. The quietest piece, but the most reliable one. And in a league where many shine when everything's going well, he showed up when things were on fire. And that, in a team chasing history, was worth pure gold. June 1st, 2016, Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Warriors versus Cavaliers, Steph versus LeBron. The stage couldn't have been bigger, the lights the brightest, the cameras, the expectations, all pointed at the usual names. But that night, something unexpected happened. Steph was off, out of rhythm, uncomfortable, swallowed up by the defense. Golden State needed a spark. Not a last-minute hero, but someone who could unlock the game without breaking the system. And that's when Shawn Livingston stepped in, silently, as always, no faces, no gestures, just to play. That night he dropped 20 points, but it wasn't just the number, it was how he did it. He shot 8 out of 10 from the field, 0 3-pointers, 0 flash, all from his zone, mid-range, short post-ups, calculated spins, surgical floaters. Every time Cleveland threatened to close the gap, Livingston answered with a clean hit, direct, precise, lethal. It was like watching a machine execute a plan no one else understood. Golden State won that game, and for a moment the spotlight shifted. That time, it wasn't Curry who saved the day. It was the guy who had almost lost his leg, the one who'd been written off by half the league, the one who had spent years looking for a place to belong. That performance didn't just give the Warriors breathing room, it gave Livingston something deeper, validation, not from the media, not from the stats, but the kind that really matters, from his teammates, from his coach, from the game itself. Because that night, he proved he wasn't there by chance. He was there because he deserved to be, and the most impressive thing, no one was surprised. Kerr already knew what he had, his teammates did too, and Livingston just did what he always did, step in, execute, and not miss. It was his night, his moment, his redemption in front of the world. While the NBA was turning into a three-point party with video game-like stats and an increasingly frantic pace, Shawn Livingston seemed like he came from another century, a living anachronism. Over his entire career, he attempted just 73 three-pointers. Not in a season, in 15 years. And yet he was a key piece of one of the most dominant teams in history. How could that be? The answer lay in the space most had already abandoned, the mid-range. That area many coaches labeled inefficient, Livingston turned it into his private laboratory. In 2018 to 2019, for example, he shot 57.1% from 10 to 16 feet out. Insane, an almost ridiculous number for that type of shot. And it wasn't luck, it was repetition, method, total control. His signature move was as simple as it was inevitable. Guarded by a smaller point guard, he'd turn his back, rise calmly for the shot, and net. He did it so many times with such consistency that it became predictable. But it didn't matter because you knew what he was going to do and you still couldn't stop it. And it wasn't just the shot. It was his tempo, his court vision. When the team needed to slow the pace, he was there. When they needed a mistake-free possession, a measured pass, a cold decision in the middle of chaos, he was there. He didn't make noise. He didn't call for the ball. He didn't seek recognition. He just executed. On a team with Curry, Clay, Durant, and Draymond, Livingston was the guy who tied it all together. The silent cog that kept the engine from overheating, and that, on a machine loaded with offensive firepower, was worth more than any stat. He was a specialist in a different kind of basketball. Slower, more tactical, more cerebral, but just as deadly. And the best part is that he never tried to be anything else. He never chased the trend. He stayed true to his game, even when the entire world seemed to be telling him he was wrong, and in the end, without shouting it, without chasing it, he ended up being right. Shawn Livingston was never a superstar. He didn't grace magazine covers, didn't have his own sneaker line or a Netflix documentary. He wasn't an all-star. He didn't make the cover of 2000. And yet those who know mention his name in the same breath as the essentials. Because his impact wasn't measured in points. It was measured in trust, in the right decisions when everything was shaking, in the peace of mind that if you put him on the court, things wouldn't spiral out of control. He played 5 seasons with Golden State. In all of them, he played over 70 games. In all of them, he was part of that silent core that pushed the team to 5 straight finals and 3 championships, and he did it without changing who he was. While the NBA became an avalanche of threes and short possessions, he kept slowing the game down, posting up smaller guards, spinning with grace, executing with the calm of someone who had already seen it all. But his true legacy was invisible. Livingston was a moral compass. He didn't raise his voice, but everyone listened. He was the guy who had been at the bottom and made it back. The one who remembered, even in the glory days, that it could all disappear in a second. His story became a mirror for the younger players and an emotional anchor in a locker room full of talent, egos, and ambition. When he retired in 2019 at age 34, there were no fireworks, just a sober image, a statement, and the full respect of the entire league. But the Warriors didn't let him go. In 2020, they brought him onto the front office staff in charge of player development and well-being, because they knew his contributions were just beginning, because someone who survived hell, who learned to walk again, to play again, and to win will always have something to teach. Maybe his best play didn't happen on the court. Maybe it was refusing to disappear, finding a way to stay valuable when everyone had written him off. There are no highlights of that, no viral celebrations or explosive stats, but that doesn't make it any less important. On the contrary, that's what makes him unforgettable. For 15 years, Shawn Livingston specialized in a shot that seemed from another era. It wasn't spectacular, didn't blow up on social media or light up arenas, but it was steady, precise, almost clinical. That mid-range turnaround, that short jumper, always with the same form, always from the same spot, and yes, it almost always went in. But maybe that wasn't the real shot he never missed, because when you look at his full story, what stands out isn't the efficiency, it's the resilience. The shot that never missed was his decision to come back, to not give up when the basketball world had already counted him out, to keep going even without a star's body, without a guaranteed contract, without a clear future. He was the guy who, when everything seemed broken, chose to shoot anyway, to bet on himself, to rewrite his story through pain. His legacy isn't measured in SportsCenter highlights or YouTube compilations, it lives in the invisible. In that quiet space where players don't seek glory, but a place where what matters isn't standing out, it's holding on. Where you don't need to shine to change a team, and maybe, just maybe, the real shot he never missed was every time he chose to keep going. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. This was Hoop Secrets, and I'll see you next time.